But the little prince was wondering. The planet was tiny. Over what could the king really reign? Sire, he ventured. Excuse me for asking. I command you to ask, replied the king. Sire, over what exactly do you reign? Over everything, clearly. With great simplicity, he answered. Over everything? With a discreet gesture, the king pointed out his planet, to the other planets, and to the stars. Over all that? Asked the little prince. Yes, over all of that, the king replied. They obey immediately. I tolerate no insubordination. Such a power amazed the little prince. If he had wielded it himself, he could have watched not 44, but 72, or even 100, even 200 sunsets on the same day without ever having to move his chair. And since he was feeling rather sad on account of remembering his own little planet, which he had forsaken, he ventured to ask a favor of the king. I'd like to see a sunset. Do me a favor, your majesty. Command the sun to set. If I command a general to fly from one flower to the next like a butterfly, or to write a tragedy, or to turn into a seagull, and if the general did not carry out my command, which of us would be in the wrong, the general or me? You would be, said the little prince quite firmly. Exactly. One must command from each what each can perform. The king went on. Authority is based first of all upon reason. If you command your subjects to jump in the ocean, there will be a revolution. I am entitled to command obedience because my orders are reasonable. Then my sunset? Insisted the little prince, who never let go of a question once he asked it. You shall have your sunset. I shall command it, but I shall wait, according to my science of government, until conditions are favorable. And when will that be? Inquired the little prince. Well, well, replied the king, first consulting a large calendar. That will be around... that will be tonight, around 7:40. And you'll see how well I'm obeyed. The little prince yawned. He was regretting his lost sunset. And besides, he was already growing a little bored. I have nothing further to do here. Growing a little bored, he replied to the king. I'll be on my way now. Do not leave, answered the king, who was so proud of having a subject at last. Do not leave. I shall make you my minister. A minister of what? Of justice. But there's no one to judge, said the little prince, looking around his empty planet. You never know, the king replied. I have not yet explored the whole of my realm. I am very old. I have no room for a carriage, and it wearies me to walk. Oh, but I've already seen for myself, said the little prince, leaning forward to glance one more time at the other side of the planet, just to be sure he didn't miss anything. No, he didn't. There's no one over there either. And the king said, but I can judge myself. So then the king replied, then you shall pass judgment on yourself. That is the hardest thing of all. It is much harder to judge yourself than to judge others. If you succeed in judging yourself, it's because you are a truly wise little man. But I can judge myself anywhere, said the little prince. I don't need to live here. Well, the king said, I have good reason to believe that there is an old rat living somewhere on my planet. I hear him at night. You could judge that old rat. From time to time, you will condemn him to death. That way his life will depend on your justice. But you'll pardon him each time for economy's sake. There's only one rat. I don't like condemning anyone to death, the little prince said. And now I think I'll be on my way. No, said the king. The little prince, having completed his preparations, had no desire to aggrieve the old monarch. If your majesty desires to be promptly obeyed, he should give me a reasonable command. He might command me, for instance, to leave before this minute is up. It seems to me that conditions are favorable. Quite witty was the little prince. The king, having made no answer, the little prince hesitated at first, and then, with a sigh, took his leave. He tried to appease him and let him have his way. But the king didn't answer. Then the king said, I make you my ambassador. The king hastily shouted after him. He had a great air of authority. The little prince looking back as he walked on. Grown-ups are so strange, the little prince said to himself as he went on his way. The second planet was inhabited by a very vain man. Ah, a visit from an admirer, he exclaimed when he caught sight of the little prince, still at some distance. To vain men, other people are just admirers. Hello, said the little prince. That's a funny hat you're wearing. It's for answering acclamations, the very vain man replied. Unfortunately, no one ever comes this way. Is that so? Said the little prince, who did not understand what the vain man was talking about. Clap your hands, directed the man. The little prince clapped his hands, and the vain man tipped his hat in a modest acknowledgement. This is more entertaining than the visit to the king, the little prince said to himself, and he continued clapping. To appease the vain man and stroke his ego. The very vain man continued tipping his hat in acknowledgement. Thank you. Thank you. Thank After 5 minutes of this exercise, the little prince tired of the game's monotony. "And what would make the hat fall off?" he asked. But the vain man did not hear him. Vain men never hear anything but praise. "Do you really admire me?" Rewind. "Do you really admire me?" "A great deal?" he asked the little prince. "What does that mean, admire?" asked the little prince. "To admire means to acknowledge that I am the handsomest, the best dressed, the richest, and the most intelligent man on the planet." "But you're the only man on the planet," replied the little prince. "Do me a favor. Admire me all the same," replied the vain man. "I admire you," said the little prince with a little shrug of his shoulders. "But what is there about my admiration that interests you so much?" And the little prince went on his way. Out of that planet. Yet again. "Grown-ups are certainly very strange," he said to himself as he continued on his journey. The next planet was inhabited by a drunkard.